Okay, so welcome everyone to Improv Choreo Tools. Garrett and I are excited to be here with you, and this is a little outline of what we're going to cover today. As usual, we do have a quick, brief Americanized theater summary, and then we're going to dive right in with why improv, why is important, what does it do, and then how to begin creating a safe space for yourself. Different types of motivators that we can use when considering improv. And then as usual, Garrett and I typically like to break almost every sort of choreographic or artistic thing that we cover in these sessions down in our four most basic foundational concepts, and that is time, space, energy, and form. Now, some of the improv motivators we'll talk about today don't include those, but the majority of them are going to fall underneath one of those categories. And then finally, self-feedback and research. And I really want to emphasize that we are taking improv from the idea of that we're working towards using it for for choreography, that we're using it as a choreography process. And of course, improv can be used in other ways, but that is our primary focus today, is how to use it in the choreographic process. I'm Kate. I use she, her pronouns, and Garrett and I are the co-CEOs of Americanized Theater. We're both PSA Master Rated choreographers, and we work together to have as much education as we can, because Americanized Theater really wants to empower and foster artistic and contemporary skating. And those of you who are interested in pursuing that through education, performance, and outreach. As you can see, some of our values are inclusion, acceptance, innovation, and authenticity. And we are excited today to be here with a small but fierce group, so we can learn from you all, and we're going to have a discussion and really get to dialogue with one another about the process of improv and how we're utilizing it. So thank you, those of you who came and that have your video cameras on and are present with us. We really appreciate your engagement. And then just a quick, brief little bullet points on what exactly is contemporary skating. At this point, it is a global movement and in a growing discipline in skating. It's what we like to think of as a personal exploration of our authentic selves, because when we can be our most authentic is when we can access our most creativity. And we do like to think about movement on the ice to challenge the cultural rigidity of traditional figure skating. So some of the things that we do may seem quote unquote weird or different, but we're asking you to have an open mind and be ready to learn from each other, and also ready to kind of see what your body can do. All right, so let's dive in. Why improv? So we were thinking about the ways and the reasons why we do improv. So number one, choreographing, which is what we're going to talk about mostly today. But there are other really great benefits to improv. You can be with your community. You can learn your body's limitations. You can be more aware of your body and what it feels like when it moves. Which from a coaching standpoint, I think is really important to know what your limitations are, and so that you can teach beyond those if you need to. It's for research and exploration, just finding things that haven't done before, that you haven't done before. Maybe it's contact improv, finding things with partners or groups that you haven't done before. And it also can be used to express through therapeutic practice. And so Garrett and I actually had a wonderful conversation with another skater earlier today in regards to improv and sort of the differences between using it with cues and being really mindful while you're improving versus using it with just as therapy and not really being mindful, just kind of letting your body flow and go. And both of those are really beneficial. But again, we're really focusing on choreography for this whole session. So we ask that while you're improving, you do bring that mindfulness element to it so that you can kind of start putting the pieces together for choreography. However, that's not to say that some of these other bullet points aren't equally important and really therapeutic, honestly, and that you don't always have to be mindful while you're doing improvisation. Another way that I like to really teach improv when I'm communicating to a group of coaches or skaters, they often look at it like it's like a menu at a restaurant, right? Where they think this is too many options, and I don't like improv because it's too many things to do. I don't know what to do. But we can think of it more like writing, and that our vocabulary, our words come from what we know. They come from our skating skills. They come from 6 ways of the spine. They come from our arms and our hands doing things that they do, gestures and different types of movements. And they come for the Choreo tools, time, space, energy, form, if you know what those are. So using the vocabulary that is already inside of you, and at any level, every skater has some of those inside of them. And then you can start to form short phrases and then finally construct sentences and paragraphs. And so that you're creating work from the vocabulary movements that you already know. And then you can go back and edit that. So it really is a lot like writing. And sometimes I use that metaphor to help make it more approachable for new students to improvisation. And then finally, as I said, this session is going to be focusing on improv to create. So we're asking you stay present. And we will be putting improvisational boundaries in place, or cues. We will be cueing you so that you have that guidance to help sort of make decisions and choices as choreographers. Some improv motivators that we can use are music, personal experiences, things from books. I'm sure many of you know this is essentially inspiration, right? Nature, these things are the things that inspire us. And it's probably a huge list, and I haven't listed everything here really. But the motivators that you can enter a space and start doing improvisation can come from a lot of different factors. The intention behind it can be different. The audience that's going to watch that improv or not watch that improv can change how you step into a space. So Garrett, just remind me, we're moving past this one and coming back to it for the exercise, right? Or are we stopping here? Okay.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're moving on. Correct. Okay. So I've highlighted some of these for our exercise, so we'll come back to this. So we're going to kind of barrel out some of these slides so we can get right to the exercises. How to begin in a safe creative space. This really is the most important part of starting, because you're not going to be feeling free if you are on that freestyle session with 100 people whizzing around doing their long programs. And so in general, you need to know what you need to create that safe space. Or the creative space, whatever that space is. Maybe it's an off-ice space, maybe it's your bedroom, maybe it's a dance studio, or maybe it's a quiet public session. So when you enter that space, you can read. I'm not going to need to go through all of these, but using breath to become aware of where you are, starting to get inside of your body, and then acknowledging what external and internal factors can really help you feel free. Do you need it to be warm? Should it be cold? Do you need to wrap yourself up if you're on the ice so that you're really warm? Do you want that music playing? Do you want no music playing? So kind of acknowledge what it is that you need to help you feel that you can start to move your body freely. And then we really like to use these 3 main mantras: non-judgment, curiosity, and compassion. And non-judgment being that you aren't making judgment calls about the movement that comes, you're just moving, because it is research and exploration. Curiosity is that you can go back in and watch the videos, or be curious about what your body's thinking, like what your body's doing, or how your muscles feel, and that, what is the cue for the improv? Be curious about that cue, and how does that change your experience? And then be compassionate. If you have an injury, and again, limitations, be compassionate with yourself. And if you're not feeling it, sometimes it's you're fatigued and it's a tired day. So your improv can be a little tired. So give yourself a little compassion there. So really good to create that safe creative space to start. Then we're going to dive right into some of these cues. And again, are we doing this now? Wait, maybe we're taking a pause here. I can't remember what we had said.
We have some video examples after space and energy.
Okay, so we're going to go time, space, energy, videos, and then stop. Sorry, we did not have our ducks in a row. Well, we did. He obviously knows, and I don't remember. So we're going to go through how time, space, and energy can help give you guidance and cues. One thing we love to use, let me see if it's working. Okay. As figure skaters, what's the number one thing? Musicality. So especially with intro, if you're teaching kids, if you're starting yourself, musicality is a great way to start. You can find rhythm, you can find it in your body, you can find that syncopated rhythm, you can find accents, and all of those can be, movement can respond to those. So when you're listening and you're finding that and music is really getting you going and it's like it's your vibe, like go with it. That's a great way to start and is certainly a great way to intro to improv. We like to do something called the tempo dial. This is a specific improv exercise actually that we've used in seminars. And we talk about the tempo dial a lot in terms of time and that the tempo of your body or your speed across the ice. So the thing about in skating is we actually have access to both. You can move your speed of your body from 0, nothing, to 10, which is going to probably be different for everyone. You also can do that same thing, speed across the ice. You also can blend the two. You could move your body at a 10, but be moving across the ice at a 5 because of the glide. So kind of a cool thing to work through in your own time, using that tempo dial as a guide and exploring what your range of it is. Then kind of taking a step back, we oftentimes get wrapped up on that tempo dial, and most skaters move, of course, between 4 and 6. And we may even, hit 7, 8, 9, 10, but are we really getting to 0? Are we remembering that stillness is pause and pausing is going to be a part of that? And just taking a moment, even in your improv, even when you're in the middle of like a really mindful improv, of stopping and seeing what could initiate next and not always working fluidly. And then challenging yourself, use contrast. So maybe you work against that musicality, which we've talked a lot in the past in terms of choreography, of course, but notice what maybe your go-to speed is. What is your go-to tempo? Work in the zone that doesn't feel as comfortable. And then finally, try no music, which we always encourage. Many of you have worked with us before and have heard that before. But I'd like to maybe take a second to talk about the second part of that. Identify your internal rhythm. And that's something that could be a really fun improv in your own body. Like, what does your internal fluid rhythm look like? Where does it sit on the tempo dial? How does it move? I think we often think of hitting the rhythm of the music, but maybe we each kind of have our own rhythm inside of us. And we could explore that some. And then when you don't have that music on, it makes you listen extra closely to your environment and notice the changes in your movements and how the edges sound when you do that, or how the toe pick sounds. So that's a really special thing that we have access to as skaters too. Zipping on through improv in space, considering the space of the ice. So a really great improv exercise that we frequently use is pathways. Creating different pathways. Maybe it's a circle or a straight line or a zigzag, talking about, the short axis or the long axis, or going towards one focal point and then changing direction to another. Those are all really good exercises of improv to help you understand sort of pathways. Limiting your space on the ice. Maybe your improv only stays inside of the circle. Maybe it has to use the full ice. How does that change the choices that you make when you do that? Space of the body, of course, all of you are aware of 6 ways of the spine. I put in armography because this is, again, the vocabulary we're using to build our paragraphs. We can move our core body. We can move our arms. We can move our whole body up and down. We can think about symmetry or asymmetry in our arms. We can use pedestrian gestures, pedestrian movements. So all of those, by the way, could each individually be their own improv exercise. You could spend a whole exercise on 6 ways of the spine and the different ways and how those feel. You could spend a whole exercise on utilizing symmetry versus asymmetry in your limbs, your legs, your feet, your arms. You could spend a whole one on pedestrian movements. What's walking, what's jogging, what's skipping, and those types of explorative movements. consider isolated body parts. This is another one we use in seminars frequently, and I often get a good feedback on this because not many skaters think about using their head as the initiator, or think about using their shoulder, or think about using their right big toe, right? Like we feel like our feet almost don't matter because they're cramped inside their skates. So kind of thinking about isolated body parts to totally initiate, how does that energy inside of that one body part respond and move into another body part? And that isolated body part exercise can really bring you to new places. And then finally, we just wanted to do a little touch on contact improv. Obviously, that won't be a part of our exercises today, but contact improv is a really special part of spatial improv because now you've added another person to the mix. There's weight, pressure-based movement. It really is give and take. It's like a conversation, and you get to create new shapes in space and build new lifts. As you can see in the photo, there's like really cool shapes there. And those of you who work with ensembles, I know many of you do here, it's really great work to have a partner or someone that you can kind of try some of this stuff out with that could give you some new shapes for your choreography for group work. Without having to always do the big synchro lifts or the main ones that we always see, and having it be just a little bit different. Like even this one here on the ground, right? She's just leaning over and he's like on her back. We could probably figure out a way to do that with our heels in the ice or such. So kind of having a partner to explore with can really take you new directions in your choreography, especially for group choreography. Okay. And everyone here is aware of 6 ways of the spine, but we do like to just do our quick little tidbit about it. These are the 6 different directions, the spinal movements that we teach. Of course, they can all blend together and create 3-dimensional movement. And as I said before, that in itself is a great improv exercise that you can work through the different spaces and then combining them and feel how it feels to skate and use your skating skills, 3 turns, chassés, spirals, and also combine that core body movement. All right, last slide before we take a little pause is energy. So those of you, again, who have heard of Laban, of course, is a great start in terms of your quality as a movement. And it is a great exercise. I'll tell you, we do this a lot at seminars. We do a Laban energy improv exercise. It's a longer one. It usually takes about 40 minutes, 45 minutes. And what we do is we have the skaters have a piece of paper. They move first in, you can see here on the graph, like light movement. And so we'll give them light movement for about a minute and a half of just free light movement. And then they go back to their piece of paper and they draw or they write how it felt in their body. And then you do that for all of these options. So strong, indirect, direct, sustained. We use heavy also for we usually use light and heavy. This graph has slightly different words. But if you consider how at the end of that whole exercise, everyone then has a sheet or a journal written in with how it really felt in their body. So that is a great resource. And that research is something that they're stepping away, knowing their body more, knowing what it feels like in their muscles to have experienced some of that. And so it's a really good improv exercise. Next, I put these 2 together because adjectives and verbs is obviously a great one because those are our emotions. So you can do the improv exercise of picking out of a hat a ton of different adjectives or verbs. You could do emojis and they pick out of the hat emojis. That's a really good exercise. And then they get to work through how does their energy change when they're expressing sadness? How does their energy change when they're expressing anxiousness or versus happy? So yeah, and then metaphors and scenarios kind of goes along with, you can pull out of a hat, be like honey, or your electricity. You can also do scenarios like, we've often done hot caught in a ceiling fan. So like a bird caught in a ceiling fan, how does that feel? What does that look like in a body or in a group of bodies? So you're working in terms of blending some of these concepts together in just by having these metaphors they're having to work through. And then finally, energy also is associated with sort of the weightedness and the muscle tension in our body. So those are also separate improvs. You could explore weightedness, how gravity drives your movement versus working against gravity. I always have really enjoyed this one choreographer that I worked with at one of the contemporary skating festivals in Europe. He always said, for gravity and heavy movement, feel like your blood is getting pulled down to the earth. And then for the light movement, he would say, feel like your skin is getting pulled up into the universe, up past the stars. And so just having those kind of clear pictures can really give you the change in energy and change in weightedness of your body. And then finally, muscle tension. Just what does it feel like when you squeeze your muscles really tight? How slow or fast can you move with that? And what does it feel like when you're fully loose? How does that change the tempo of movement and therefore the expression of the movement? All right, so we're going to take a little pause here, kind of overloaded you all with a ton of information. And what's so great about it is like so many of those things that many of you here have taken MCT and learned, is all of those are exercises you can bring to the table in seminars or try on your own. Almost every one of those bullet points.
All right, we're going to show just a few examples of what we've already talked about in the slides. We're going to start with some space improv examples here. Oh, sorry, wrong one. There it is. There's space. Here she is. Okay. So this is a choreographer, William Forsythe, who's a modern day contemporary dance choreographer. And in his work, he works a lot through improv and particularly working through points of the body. And so he oftentimes develops points through either a joint or a particular bone. So like seeing here how the forearm creates a line and how that connects to another body part and how that can initiate movement. Just the idea of the way the bones can move, also in the sense of curves and being aware of the different spatial shapes that are possible in the body. I would recommend looking into more of his work if this is something interesting to you. And he works through a lot of this improv to create movement phrases for his company. As Kate mentioned, I'm just going to pause for a moment. That Pathways is a great tool to use in improv. This was a particular exercise at the Unfreeze Berlin Festival, which is a contemporary skating festival in Berlin. It hasn't happened in a few years now, but if you ever get the chance to go, it is a lot like the American Contemporary Skating Festival, but more heavy on improv. The particular exercise that you are seeing an example of here is where there were four corners and people were lined up on four corners, and the prompt was to just move in a straight line. And so all the corners converge in the center. And as you see, different people are improving their way down the pathways. And here you can see another iteration of that where everyone is on the same line, but yet they're on a different plane in the pathway. Seeing how different people are using levels and energy qualities and finding movement through this improv exercise. Oh, who are they? This is an example of contact improv, and Kate and I have been doing this a long time, so we obviously are comfortable with each other. We know how we both move, and as you can see, we really have fun exploring just different contact points finding different parts of the body to find positive or negative space. And as Kate said, it is a conversation. It's a give and take. It's a giving of energy and a receiving of energy and impulse through the touch. And it is this constant play where you'll never really know what's going to happen, which makes it really, really fun. And here's another clip from Unfreeze. I thought this was really interesting because this was one of the teachers. I believe this was Jan. He obviously doesn't have skates and he's still improvising with one of the participants, and just seeing the different contact points they create, the different ways they can still move together. Oops, I'll just mute that. And here is an improv example of more body isolations. As Kate was saying, you see different parts of the body that she is initiating to create the movement, whether it be through the shoulder or the back or the arm, seeing how movement is just flowing through her body from different points. And with body isolations, it really works through time, space, energy, like all the different processes can be explored with this tool of initiation and isolating different body parts. And here as some energy examples. Back about 10 years ago, Jody Porter, who is the founder of AIT, created some workshops that were Ricky Harris's, in honor of Ricky Harris, had some workshops that she put on. And Ricky Harris, we call the grandmother of AIT because she was the mentor of Jody Porter. And Ricky Harris was a choreographer back in the 1970s and 80s, was kind of her heyday. And with her workshops, she worked a lot through improv with energy and finding, as we talked about before, how energy can flow through the body, especially through body isolations. And here is an example of one of those workshops that Jody conducted back in the early 2010s of those improv exercises that Ricky Harris created. And here's an example of contrasting energy qualities. As you can see, Elise did a vibratory leg position, she's moving on her toes with sharp staccato movement, moving into fluid movement here. She's moving down the ice, really playing with different energy qualities in the body.
Also definitely playing with 6 ways of the spine big time, which is cool.
Mm-hmm. Here's an example of more indirect movement, as we talked about Laban and all the different ways we can play with improv in the body. Kate, you might have also been thinking about other things, but indirect was the big one I noticed here.
Yeah, indirect was definitely the big one.
Noticing how her body is kind of like a feather in the wind. It doesn't have a necessary location to be, and is very very navigated by direction. And here is, I did list this as bound. I would say more light and heavy contrast here. Bound, I mean, there's moments of bound, but if you really want to get bound, I probably wouldn't move this much, but you can see here some heaviness in the body, playing with levels here as moving through heavy and bound movement. This is a great example of expression through improv. As we often talk about, energy deals with emotion, and playing with that through improv, you can see very clear emotion through the body, through the limpness of her hands and the sharpness of her elbows, and her face definitely tells a story. And as you will see, she moves through different facial improv that is really fascinating to watch. Noticing the muscle tension in her body and in her face. We talk about muscle tension oftentimes in different limbs and hands and fingers and whatnot, but here is a great example of how we can use muscle tension in the cheeks and the jaw and the forehead and parts of the body we oftentimes don't think about.
It's amazing the visceral story that she tells without anything more than that muscle tension. Okay. So it's time for you all to do some things. So Garrett, I think we're starting with them thinking about the motivators, right? So I'll pop that screen back up.
Yeah. Time to write, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
We're going to just take a couple minutes to let you kind of get your brain wrapped around a motivator. So I'm going to go back to that screen sharing stop. Sorry. Back to that slide. And we had highlighted a couple of those motivators for a certain reason. We want you to choose one of the highlighted ones, please. Because we're not going to use music today. It's a little bit tricky on Zoom anyways. Time, space, energy, form is some of the cues we're going to be giving to you. Emotions, I guess actually if you wanted to choose emotions, you could. Fitness is not sort of the zone that we're working in, and contact with others is obviously not really possible. So if you could choose one of the ones that are in gray and just take about, I don't know, maybe about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. It's not going to be very long because of our time constraint in general. Pick one and maybe just write some sentences or words or draw a picture, kind of get yourself wrapped around a motivator for your work tonight in your space. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask. Does anyone quickly, before we get into our space, which is what's happening next, because you have to set your stage. Does anyone want to share something they picked or sort of some thoughts that just came to mind? If you don't, that's okay too, but you can.
I'll share. Oh,
okay.
Am I supposed to raise my hand? I'm so sorry.
Right. Karen, go, and then Lily.
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry.
You all, there's such a small group here. You can just unmute yourselves.
So I drew a hag woman because I'm reading a book right now that I'm rereading a book called The it's really intriguing. It's the stories of the wild woman archetype. And it's all about like accessing the more intuitive and maybe more repressed aspects of the self. And when you face those things, maybe it's not so pretty, and maybe like accepting, facing and then accepting and then integrating that hag, and like, you know, and tapping into that intuition, because it's like a strong guide, and it's a tool, you know, if it's used the right way. So that's what is going to motivate me tonight, the old hag.
The old hag. Lily?
I'm very interested in like isolated body parts. I was thinking like, you know, something that I don't really think of often, which is like my toe or my elbow. But then I was like thinking about my head, and then I brought facials into it. So then I was like, oh, now I feel like I'm playing with like emotions. So I think it's gonna be a combination of like my head and like my facials. But I'm also like, I share with you a song that like I really want to choreograph something to. So I think I'll have that song kind of like as the backdrop for what my movement is matched to, just like playing in my own head.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Something interesting too, and I will wonder this as you explore it tonight, Lily, is when you move your face like that, how then does it affect the rest of your body? Because so much of the time I feel like we do it this way and we work our body, and then our face is a responder. And like if your face is the motivator or the instigator, how does that change how your shoulders and your wrists and your fingers feel? And I think that'll be an interesting thing to explore and research. All right, for the time, we will move in, and Garrett's going to take it from here. You're on mute, hon.
Still happens after all these years of Zoom. I invite you all to find some space wherever you may be. You don't need a ton of space, but certainly somewhere where you can sit, and we will be moving around a little bit. So we will start seated. So meet me in a nice, comfortable seated position. And as we find our seat here, I invite you to close your eyes if that feels right for you, or soften your gaze. And feel those sits bones planted into the earth, lifting through the crown of your head. And we're going to start by just being aware of our breath. Inhale through the nose. And exhale through the mouth. And as we continue breathing here, just noticing how your body is feeling. And again, as we talked about, practicing non-judgment, just being curious about how we feel in this moment. And as we continue to breathe, I invite you to reach your arms down and up on our inhale, so that they reach all the way up to the sky, clasping the palms together. And on our exhale, we're going to bend our elbows and bring those hands to our chest. So on our inhale, we reach our arms down and up. Exhale, bend the elbows, hands to heart center. Inhale, reaching arms down and up. And exhale. One more breath in, reaching those arms down and up. And exhale, bending our elbows, hands to heart center. And now bringing the palms to the chest, palms on top of each other, hands on our chest here. Taking a moment to observe. Gently open those eyes. And meet me in all fours, where we're gonna come into palms and knees. And here we're gonna just find a little bit of movement, whether it be circles or sways, or maybe it's child's pose. Just as we prepare to do some movement together. Moving nice and slow, just being aware of how the body feels making contact with the floor. Remember that our breath is always here for us. And meeting me in child's pose, we're going to take a breath here. In through the nose and out through the mouth. And here we're going to start just little sways. Swaying back and forth, letting the head move back and forth, swaying the legs and the arms, the back. Just finding little swaying movement like we were being moved by a light wind. And in your own time, coming up to our knees, coming up vertebrae by vertebrae with the back, and continuing that swaying movement here. And slowly coming up to our feet, but continuing this swaying movement, never moving too quickly. Vertebrae by vertebrae. So again, our upper back's the last thing to come back up. And as you find neutral spine, we're gonna just keep swaying for a moment. Continue breathing. Feeling the feet firmly planted into the ground. What does it feel like to make contact with the earth, spreading out those toes? Feeling rooted into the earth here. We're going to start with just a little movement through our fingers. So moving those fingers, very small, finding those creases, those digits, playing with rhythm of the fingers as we continue to sway here. Moving through the thumbs and the pinkies. And now as we move up, finding little circles in our wrists. Maybe moving in all directions with our circles, clockwise, counterclockwise. And being really curious now about how our wrists are moving. Maybe we're switching tempo, but keep that awareness of the wrists and how they are moving through space. And let that movement go into the elbows. Circle around with the elbows and the wrists. Feel free to also find stillness, curiosity in the elbows and the circles. the elbows, all the different ways they can move through our space, what parts of the body they might make contact with. Imagining like those elbows might have a mind of their own. And as we move up to the shoulders, let that circular movement really come up into the shoulders as well as our elbows and wrists. Remembering our breath here. Never anything forced. Go at the tempo that feels right for you. And now letting that circular movement go into the hips. So as we freely move through the wrists and the elbows, shoulders, how can that movement, that circular movement be initiated now through our hips? Maybe it's jumping around, maybe it's fluid. Maybe the left hip and the right hip have different ways they might want to move. How does that feel in the body? Remembering to be curious, compassionate, without judgment. And let that movement go into the knees, as well as the ankles. Well, now this movement, the circular movement, is really flowing through the full body. As we might have more exertion, remembering the breath. And finally, bringing awareness also to the head. How could the head move through these circles the body is creating? Finding levels. Finding different shapes. Thinking about all the circles through the body. And as we continue moving, in 3, 2, 1, I want you to find your swaying movement. Taking a few breaths here, just to lightly sway the body. And maybe walking through your space now. Just take a moment to walk through whatever space you have. Just notice the furniture, the lights, the walls, the floor. Noticing, being curious, continuing that curiosity of the space you're moving in. And as you come to one place in your space, continue to sway again here. And I want you to imagine as if you were in a shower and the water was really cold. In fact, it was freezing cold, and your body had to shiver, but you couldn't get out of this freezing cold water. So how would your body react if you were in this freezing cold shower? Keep breathing. Imagine cold water just jolting your skin. And 3, 2, 1, sway here. Sway, find your breath. And as we continue to sway, we're gonna move into a prompt where I'm gonna say the words ooey gooey. When I say ooey gooey, I want our movement to be exactly that, ooey gooey, whatever that means for you. And my cue will be ooey gooey. I'll say it twice, ooey gooey. And then I'm gonna say the words huzzah. And when I say huzzah, I want you to have an explosion of energy. And so we're going to move from the ooey gooey to an explosion of energy, however that manifests in your body. And then after the explosion of energy, release into a contraction and slowly roll up, and we'll repeat it a few times. So as we begin finding your sways, I'm going to start nice and slow with the ooey gooey. As we begin here, ooey gooey, ooey gooey, huzzah! 2, 3, 4, ooey gooey, ooey gooey, huzzah! 2, 3, 4, and ooey gooey, ooey gooey, huzzah! 2, 3, 4, and ooey gooey, ooey gooey, huzzah! 2, 3, 4, and ooey gooey, ooey gooey, huzzah! 2, 3, one more time, and ooey gooey, ooey gooey, huzzah! 2, 3, 4. Finding our sways. Remembering our breath. Placing hands on the chest and the abdomen. For some centering. And taking a breath. One final exploration here. Just tapping the body with the fingers to start. Just finding little taps with the fingers. Moving through the whole body. If you haven't given love to a certain body part, make sure you find just the whole body. Little taps here. Much as you can reach and grab. Maybe a certain part of your body needs a little more love, and feel free to stick with that for a little bit. We continue breathing, we're gonna start making those claps instead of little movements with the fingers. The little taps with claps of the body. Again, finding all the body parts to enliven. A little more faster tempo here. And if we're talking about the speed dial, I want you to imagine your speed dial moving up to a 7 or an 8. The lightness of your taps staying where they are, but the speed of which you go moving faster. Now moving at a 10. See how fast you can clap onto your body. Moving to a 4. 4. And moving to a 1. Moving at a 1. Slowly coming back to our swaying as we continue to tap our chest and our abdomen. Moving at a slow tempo. Slowly releasing our arms. Slowly, with your sways, come to stillness in your own time. And collectively, wherever we may be, let's take an inhale in through the nose and out through the mouth. Close your eyes for a moment, tapping into the sensations of the body, what may feel different in your body. And slowly opening those eyes. And feel free to grab a drink of water. Okay. So as we start some improv exploration, we are going to start with time. And we are going to begin with the tempo dial. And so through free improv, I will give you different numbers relating to the tempo dial. Take it as you will, whether
Are
it
we
be
using the motivator that we have journaled about? It's not a fully free improv, right? Because we're working towards
Thank you.
choreographing. Yeah.
Right.
So
Sorry
you're
about
going to
that.
bring back what you wrote about or drew about, and that's your initiator for the movement choices you're making. But he's going to give you guidance and cues around that, so you can work and kind of twist it, change it, feel it, vibe it, but just bring back to attention what you journaled about, because that's what where the improv initiation is coming from.
Thank you. So with that in mind, we will start. I will give different numbers. You can think of it as space of the body or space or speed of the body or speed around your space of the room. And the first one will be a 2. Being about whatever motivating phrase or word we used. Moving at a 2. Moving at a 6. Six. And moving at a 1. A 1. Moving at an 8. Zero. 3.5. And slowly coming to stillness. So taking our tempo dial, in the back of your mind, pick one of those tempo or range of tempos that we will use later. Maybe picking one that we might not often explore.
And I want to just point out too, while I was doing it, just bringing mindfulness again back, like be aware of the choices you're making. This is not a free, mindless therapeutic improv. Like sort of the way that he just led us through the warm up. That was sort of a more mindless-ish therapeutic improv to get us going. But now you're being very aware. What choices are you making? What is your wrist doing? What does your head feel like? What do your hips feel like? Be aware. So each time we build on this, continue to bring awareness and do repeated movements. So like if you felt good in a movement, bring it back, do it again, change it how we give you the guidance to. Don't just leave it. We want you to build off of the movements that feel like you're really in it.
So once you have a tempo dial range or number that you would like to explore, use that for our next prompt. And as we move into space, we will explore just 2 different 6 ways of the spine with time here. The first one being twists. So exploring through your motivating word and the tempo dial you chose, now adding in twists for 3-dimensional movement in space. Moving to a different 6 ways, we will actually combine contraction and upper back extension using the same tempo dial you chose. Contraction and upper back extensions.
So no twisting for this one.
Finding stillness. Now choosing between either the twists and the contraction upper back extension, moving forward into our next exploration. Choose which.
Say one thing, like just so what he means by that, and as a choreographer, you're thinking what fit the best for your intention, your motivator. Was it the twist and maybe this makes no sense if you're really creating a piece, but we're helping you understand how you can ask yourself those questions, right? So the choices we gave you were twisting and contractions and upper back extensions. So choose one of those 2 that fit better for your motivator, for your initiation, like why you're doing this, and then fit the same with that speed, the tempo dial. You're going to stay with that same tempo that you chose that fit the best, or maybe it's you choosing to challenge yourself. But those I want you to understand that you're staying with this, and you're making these choices because of your motivator.
So we're gonna actually move to energy time. It's running out. So yes, picking your 6 ways positions, your tempo dial, along with your motivating word or phrase. We will move through 2 different energy explorations. I will give you 2 different words. adjectives. And so the first being drip. Drip. And slowly coming to stillness. Second word is goopy. Goopy, using our tempo dial in 6 ways with goopy. And coming to stillness slowly. Kate.
Okay, so you can sit there or you can come up next to the screen. We're gonna do a slide so you get a little breather, get some water. What we're gonna do now is the last part, changing. It's like finally time to really choreograph it, right? So you have created your short phrase. Presumably, I've been working with a phrase. You're probably pretty close to having a series of movements. Hopefully, we're mindful enough to kind of have some of those. And maybe they're not always exactly the same every time. Mine weren't always, but it was the same sort of gist. And I definitely chose my, tempo dial. I chose my twist is what I chose, and I definitely chose drip. That's what I wanted to do. So we have this phrase. So now this is where you have, for the purposes of this exercise, we're gonna change it so this becomes a very set phrase. So you're now, we have to skip, unfortunately, to number 2. And what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to choose one of these bullet points.
Kate, we need the slide up.
Is it not? I thought I had it up. Why does it not work? Oh, I put it up for me, y'all. I didn't share my screen. Wow. You'd think I would also know how to do that by now. Okay. So, okay, here we go. So creating the short phrase you hopefully have. And by the way, as you do this, if you do this for actual creation of programs or for groups or ensembles or for a solo, you can kind of have an A phrase, and then you could have a B phrase. You could start putting together. You could switch the order so you can move with those. Sometimes it's not still quite right. Maybe your phrase still needs to be worked with and you want to ask more questions. So we're going to ask the questions of, could we retrograde it? Could we change the level or the location of the space? Can we make it more rotational? Can we amplify it? Can we repeat it? Like have more repetition. And these are only a few words, y'all. We didn't put them all up here. And then finally, collaborating with others' phrases. Now, this is what we do in seminars a lot, is we kind of have a collective vision of a final piece, and we put together all of our little mini phrases to create like an actual piece of improv, which is really cool. But again, for the purposes of tonight, we're going to do number 2, and I want you all to pick one of the bullet points here. Think about, in terms of your motivating factor, what it is that maybe your phrase that you've been playing with could use. And honestly, if your answer as a choreographer now, not just an improviser, is that it doesn't need anything and you're really expressing your motivating factor without one of these, then that's okay too. But I feel like mine needs repetition. So I'm going to do more repetition because mine is based off of a painting that has a lot of repetition in it. So I'm going to choose that. So pick one of these bullet points. Again, there's a lot more to choose from in reality, but these are some good examples. And yeah, let's just take it. Oh, do you want me to keep it up? Maybe you want to see it still. There it is. Is that sharing? I'm not sharing again. God, you guys, I'm so bad at this. I am going to share right now. 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, so I'll keep it right there for you. So picking one of the bullet points from number 2. And we only have like 2 minutes. Sorry. No, we got to keep it moving. Amplification, if you don't know, of course, is like making it bigger and bigger increasingly. Since we have the delight of having such a small group, and Karen just got her chair, but she's gonna have to move it. I would love to do, and also since we don't have the pleasure of videoing ourselves and being able to watch that, okay, so that is the self-feedback point of this, right? Like, is having that ability to have videoed it, watching it, seeing how it looks, how it feels, and then starting to put it in with another phrase, and that's the creation of the choreography. But since we don't have that benefit, we only have each other's eyes, and we are in a non-judgmental space. I would love it if we did like 3 and 3, maybe Karen, me, and Lily, and then Jillian, Garrett, and Elizabeth. And just kind of to watch, and we can be objective eyes for each other, and sort of see what we see. Let's go.
I'm beat. It's a good thing y'all can't hear the audio because there was so much cracking going on.
Cracking from what?
Like just like my body sitting at work all day and not moving, like joints like.
Okay, does anyone want to share what they saw?
You had a nice duet, Jillian.
We were like very similar. It was very funny.
Oh my gosh.
It was non-contact improv.
Contact improv.
I noticed how Garrett used his facial expression and bound energy. It was very tight. His muscles were very tight. And there was like a reaching action. So I don't know what the motivator was, but it felt as a viewer like he was trying to tell a story of not being able to achieve or get something he wanted. I don't know.
That sounds great. And I was thinking about being a dragon.
dragon status.
My art is so beautiful. It's in the eye of the beholder. Anybody else?
With Garrett, I was noticing how he was able to like sustain the tension like that's in my brain. I was like, that must be really hard to like balance like on your toes, but also like exert like all energy throughout like all the way through your like fingertips or whatever, and to hold the position. I was like, wow, I hope I can do that someday.
Jillian, I couldn't see your upper half that much, FYI.
Sorry. It's a small room.
I know. I should have set up in my basement. I know.
Karen, did you have anything?
I did. I thought that there was, I enjoyed the contrast. I'm so sorry. I have forgotten your name. Oh, Elizabeth. The contrast between Elizabeth and Garrett's combinations. The tension, there was a tension in Garrett's that really, I was really into, and I was sort of dove into, and then I felt this release and relief when I switched over to watching Elizabeth, which was just, it was a great balance, actually. I enjoyed the whole thing.
That's funny that you said release, because that's literally one of the giving more freedom was a phrase that I wrote down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well
My-
communicated.
My motivation was my watching my older son start a new school and be 10 years old and transition to a big kid, and giving him that little bit more freedom and letting go as a parent a little bit. And
Oh, I get it. I have a kid starting high school tomorrow. I'm with you.
All right. Well, so I'm just going to share the last little bit of the thing, and then we're done for the day. Thank you for bearing with us, even though we went way over. We have given you sort of an exercise of how you can go through time, space, energy, form with your improv. The objective self-feedback, being aware of your body's go-to movements and what that innate style is a great starting point. And then moving past that to try uncomfortable things. Practicing mindful improv, we've talked about. How can you remember the movement you improvised? I think that really being mindful and getting into like repetition and just short phrases, 30 seconds at each, is a good way to do it, or just videoing it and being able to go back and watch it. Notice the moments that stand out, use those. So key takeaways for today, we'll zip through. Improv is research. External, internal factors influence our movement choices. Be aware of that. Hopefully you all felt you had a safe and creative space tonight. Improv can be a choreographic process or a therapeutic practice. Today we spoke about the choreographic process. And then always exercise non-judgment, curiosity, and compassion. This is just our educational opportunity slide. I will send out this PowerPoint in a PDF to everyone. Really great resources here, additional things we'll do. By the way, the deep dive series you see there, winter 2023, what we're gonna do is we always take, so that's the end of our thing here. We always take the end of the summer series one and we divide it into 4 deep dives. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna take what you just did in an hour and a half, and we're gonna then like peel it apart and deep dive into it in March, April zone. Winter, it's usually February, March, or March, April. And so you're going to have even more opportunities to kind of work with improv and see how it can become choreography. How does that transition work? How does self-feedback or feedback from others benefit? So we're going to really dive into that next winter. So join us. That deep dive series is $75 for the 4. So it is a lot more, it's a smaller group usually, it's a lot more intense. It's not sort of this overview that we do at the end of the summer every year. So we'd love to see you all there. You all were wonderful. It was so good to see you tonight. Thank you for engaging in this. Before I close out, I'd like to ask any of you, how was this experience for you, or did this get your mind thinking a different way? I know many of you do theater and ice, many of you are choreographers. I know Lily's experiencing and researching their own body right now. So I feel like, how is this in terms of where you're all at in your journey? Yeah, Karen.
I think it's invaluable, and the timing is superb as the season starts. And I'm sort of knee deep in choreography right now, and this improv, it's sort of connected to that sort of that need to tap into intuition and the hag woman. And because I really feel this need to break away from traditional movement, you know, and really explore things that might not be so comfortable within a season that might not be so comfortable. So I, I really felt that this was invaluable, and I'm so grateful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Karen. Lily.
Yeah, this was really great. I think, you know, as I've been trying to get into contemporary skating, I don't have a foundation yet. So this was a great like starting point in terms of finding my foundation. Also, yeah, I want to choreograph more. So like I feel like now I feel like I can start playing around on my own instead of just like waiting for my private lessons to like figure something out. So yeah, I'm excited I can do something on my own. Also, I've been dancing and like going to like dance battles, and I'm going to my second one Friday. And I was just kind of like, I feel stumped. Like I feel like I gave it all on my first one. I don't know what else. Like I almost felt like in the beginning when you were talking about like, oh, like it's too much. It's like pulling like random things out of a hat. But like when you explained it, that it's like kind of language and like coming up with phrases and words, and I was like, oh, I kind of get it now, and like how that also applies to freestyling. And like improv and freestyling are like kind of similar. So yeah, I'm excited to play more with this, and it's gotten me interested in the deep dive, because at first I was like, maybe that's not for me, but now that you're kind of like, oh, like it'll be like deeper, like this but deeper, I'm like, yeah, I think I want to actually do that.
Yeah, cool. Awesome, Lily. Thanks. Anyone else? No pressure, just open space.
Yeah, no, I feel like really comfortable with improv like in myself, and like whenever I'm like in a class, it's just doing a lot of improv. I feel very like, oh, let's like dive in and like so fun. But then whenever I have to turn it around and like teach it or try to explain it to someone, I really do struggle finding like the vocabulary for it, especially for someone that's maybe like more hesitant. And I find myself being like, oh, you just like flow and see what's there. And like, that's not helpful. So, like, I just like love hearing it, like the teaching of it, like modeled, and getting to like see other people who are like maybe earlier in their improv like journeys, and like hear their process, because I just find that so helpful, just of like learning how to like how do we actually share this. And like I don't remember starting it for me, like I just don't. So like remembering like what it felt like to like start it, and like finding those words to actually be able to like give it to others is very helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. Lily, you raised your hand.
Sorry, I forgot something. I think it might be similar, but I was surprised how creative I could become. Like in the beginning, I was like, oh, I feel like I'm really stumped. I don't know where to start. I don't know, like I want to create this movement, but I don't know what it is or how to do it with my body. But like the prompts that you guys gave, and kind of like the therapeutic one in the beginning, like really started like opening. And I was like, oh my God, there's so much that I can do. And like I don't have much experience, but I feel like I can start tackling it or creating shapes for myself. So I really enjoyed that like therapeutic, like really like we went with like fingers, wrist, elbows, like breath. And then I was like, oh, I can really like I'm in my body now, and I can like try to like figure out like what to do with it.
Which is why we prioritize starting with that, and we recognize that you may not always have the chance to do that, y'all, before you've got to improv to create something or whatever. But know what external and internal factors you need for yourself. So for me, when I go improv, I know that I either need the music in my ear if I'm going to do it with music, or I need to take some deep breaths and a couple laps around the rink. Like that's how I set my stage for myself. And so you may not always have the time. You really have 45 minutes and you got to choreograph something, right? But you just know what you need to get there for your zone. And so we gave it a really long therapeutic 15 minutes today. And in the deep dive, we may even go deeper with that and give it almost a whole session of like setting the stage for yourself. But just find what works for you and have those ready to go so that you can get yourself in your space. Like I know I'm ready to create now, and this is what I need. Cool. All right, anyone else? Okay, it's late. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time. Love to all of you. Seriously, I really appreciate you all being here and being a great group. Yeah, we will see some of you very soon. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
So fun to move with you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye bye.